Hey, remember when we could drive places?
Yeah. Yeah, do stuff indoors with people we don't know.
Yep.
Go to the library on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Hey! All right, welcome to Talk Heathen. I'm Jim Barrows, and with me is the fantastic, the wonderful Rudy Bee, who's going to be showing up a lot more on Talk Heathen.
Yep, I have been asked to be a semi-regular co-host, which is crazy, and also I was thrilled at the opportunity, super excited to be here.
Fantastic.
How are you today, Jim?
You know, it's a beautiful Sunday and ready to take some calls and have some fun.
Awesome. Well, first we got to get the boring stuff out of the way, of course. Talk Heathen is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheism and separation of religion and government. Some ways to support Talk Heathen and the ACA. You can become a member on YouTube. Click the join button below the video. You can also support us on Patreon, which would be really cool. Patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. And we now have a special channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in podcast form. So if you don't want to see our beautiful faces, you just want to hear what we have to say, visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/talkheathenfg. And if you'd like to continue the discussion after the show, join us in ACA Discord, our fan-run Discord server at tiny.cc/ACA Discord. Also, make sure to check out Nonprofits, as it will be airing after this show today, 3 p.m. Central. It's an okay show. I was there for a little bit. Jim's been there. And you can see
Buck's in the background screaming at us, so.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. You can get there youtube.com/the nonprofits ACA. So definitely check that out after the show.
Yeah. All right. So are we ready to take our first caller here?
Yep. Also, reminder, we have like a ton of lines open right now. We only have one caller in the queue. So call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/callth if you want to talk with us.
Yes. All right. Here comes Chad in Michigan. Hello, Chad. How's it going today?
It's going all right. Having a pretty good time with my mother, and just got a few things I want to talk about.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
So as the call card might tell you, this past Friday I was kicked out of my dad's house for the weekend for listening to an atheist podcast, specifically Penn Jillette interview on Seth Andrews, The Thinking Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of background for that. I came out to my dad kind of unintentionally as atheist about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And during the course of that conversation, he told me he didn't want me exposing my siblings to any atheist content whatsoever. And since then, it kind of slipped my mind, wasn't really at the forefront. So I was just listening to my podcast as I normally do on my way home from school. I'm a senior in high school, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I am 18, so no worries there. But it completely slipped my mind that he didn't want me listening to that around my siblings. And one of them must have told my dad, and I got a message from my mom telling me to call her, and she said that my dad didn't want me there for the weekend, which that
Wow.
right there kind of reminded me of what happened. So not 2 minutes after I got off that call with my mother, my dad is stomping down the stairs into my room and tells me, "What did I tell you about listening to that stuff around your siblings?" And I forget the specific details. It was kind of all a rush by the time it was actually happening. And eventually I said I did remember it and I shouldn't be. So I'm walking up the stairs almost in tears. He yells at me. I said something along, is it okay if I swear on the show?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, I told you to not fucking listen to that around your siblings. I specifically told you, or something like that. And so I grab all of my necessary school stuff since I need that. But
Right.
I drive home, which I can't remember either way. And I just go home, I'm bawling into my mother's shoulder. I tell her what happened. And luckily she's a little bit more accepting of my views. What I really want to ask and discuss is, what can I do to talk to my dad about it? Because I've thought about it myself, and there's a lot of very mean-spirited things that I know I shouldn't say. And I want some pointers on how to kind of do a little bit of repair. Because I love my father. I know he has a lot of misled opinions or views on what atheism is. Like, he phrased it as my choice to be an atheist, which I've listened to plenty of Matt about how it's not really a choice, but I want to know how to have that conversation, how to kind of discuss what the details are, because he was very angry about it, very red-faced about the entire issue. So
that is a tough conversation, and it's one that I have avoided with my parents for exactly that reason. And I'm 52, so it doesn't change much the older you get when you have parents who, in my case, suspect would blow up just like your dad did. So I think, first of all, you if you haven't already, admit that you screwed up and that you promise that you'll do your best not to do it again. But other than that, Rudy, have you had this conversation with your parents, or?
I mean, my parents don't really talk to me enough to do so. I mean, I've been told by them not to, as opposed to not listening to atheist content around my siblings, I've just been told not to contact my siblings at all. Yeah, well, but honestly, the only thing that I can really think is, I mean, of course, if there's anything that I am good at, it's apologizing. I guess, have you had, is this like a normalish interaction with your dad? Like, is it common for him to blow up and kick people out of the house and stuff like that?
No, he's actually a very level-headed, reasonable kind of guy, which is sort of why it took me completely off guard that he would yell at me like this, which, I mean, I respect him a lot for a lot of reasons, but he
definitely lost his cool.
Very strong. He's very strongly entrenched in his beliefs. He takes them very seriously.
Yeah, that makes it 10 times harder. So I don't know that even, we normally suggest studying some street epistemology, asking questions and doing things like that. But I don't know that in this particular case that's going to help much. You may need to wait a few years before you actually have a more serious conversation with your dad.
Right, you're still living in the house with him. There's going to be a lot more consequences to you disagreeing.
And at 52, I can tell you that my parents, or excuse me, 51, my parents still see me as 13-year-old me. They haven't really fully adjusted to the fact that I'm fairly old. And you at 18, I don't think that I think your dad still sees you as that 10 or 13-year-old, or whenever you had, that type of relationship with your dad, and now you're getting older and kind of separating from him. So I would imagine that there is a bit of fear on that respect too, because you're 18, you're getting ready to leave the nest, so to speak. And I don't know that is a easy time for any parent. and then for you to also be an atheist after he's tried to, I would imagine, raise you as Christian as he could. That there is a lot of fear on his side that is getting all tangled up, right? On multiple different fronts. So I think keep that in mind when you talk to him, right? That fear leads to anger, as Yoda says, and that leads to the dark side and all kinds of bad things happening. And
I was wondering if you were intentionally making a Star Wars reference or not.
I was. I didn't intend to start going there, and I realized halfway through it that we're making a Star Wars reference. But I mean, the line is not wrong, right? There was I forget what YouTube channel I was watching, but someone I think it was a TED Talk said that acting out of anger is very often acting out of fear. So what is he afraid of, right? And there's a lot of things he's afraid of. He's afraid of losing you. He's afraid of and now that you come out as an atheist, he's afraid of losing you and not seeing you in heaven, etc., and all the stuff that goes with being a Christian on that. He's afraid of you leaving the house, and he's also afraid for you because you're going in to experience new things, and he can't protect you from that. And so, I mean, there's at least 3 levels of fear there, or 3
and
areas.
All of that is probably magnified by him worrying that all that same stuff is going to happen to your siblings.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I don't know that you can actually do more than apologize and try to return to normality as much as possible. Talk to him more about, maybe try talking to him more, and finding out exactly what his fears are, and then talk to him about how you're going to mitigate whatever he is that is he's fearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure, say, hey, when I do, I won't listen in the house anymore. Maybe that's something you need to do. So maybe go to coffee shops to listen to atheist content rather than listen to them in the house. Make a concerted effort. Talk to him about those things that you're actually going to do. And then also later on down the road, maybe in a couple of weeks, talk to him about whatever fears you might have about leaving the nest and whatever your plans are post high school, right? How long you're going to live in the house or whatever. And see if you can get him to open up about that and drop some of that fear level down a little bit.
Yeah.
Might actually work. Okay. But again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give you, I don't play one on the internet either.
Yeah.
So.
If I were in your shoes, I guess I would try to make it clear that, your intent was never to be to be defiant, to be non-compliant. It was a honest mistake. You never meant to do anything hurtful. And then maybe bring up, this seems like it is very hurtful to you, and maybe I didn't realize how big of a deal this is to you, and maybe kind of talk about that. Yeah, like Jim said, get him to express what exactly his fears are there. And I think that you just making it clear that you weren't trying to do anything harmful. You made an honest mistake. It was totally unintentional. And that you want to understand why this is so hurtful to him. I think that might sort of help sort of settle his, maybe he has ideas that you are, that you did do it intentionally, that maybe you're trying to deconvert your siblings, that you are trying to influence them. And that might be what part of his fear is. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Like Jim said, we're not professionals or anything. This is just some random people on the internet giving you advice.
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean by just like talking him through it and talking about how much he heard it. But I also think there's a certain level of, I guess, a lack of information about the entire thing, because I mean, just by his action alone, I find it baffling how he reacted to it, because I mean, if he would have known, he's not unreasonable. Like if he would have known that it wasn't so much just like atheist conversation and more like an interview with Penn Jillette, which I mean, I guess he's a famous atheist, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like I could do a lot more explaining the situation, try and calm him down, try and make him like as you said, make him feel a bit less fearful about the situation, tell him what my intentions were.
And I think that it wouldn't hurt to bring up how you felt about that, how you felt like it was a very strong, maybe unreasonable reaction, and that you want to understand why he reacted that way, because it's not usual for him. Like, make it clear that you're not just doing this to, say, hey, that really sucked. But like, I understand, like, you, like, I know this is like a weird way of putting it, but I remember I worked at this place and one day my manager was starting off the day in like a really shitty mood, and everybody was like, oh, she's being such a bitch. And instead of being like, oh, she's being such a bitch, I like asked her what her favorite candy was, and I got her some from the vending machine and just left it on her desk. Like, I don't know why you're in a shitty mood, but I guess I'm gonna you don't usually act that way. I know you're not always in a shitty mood, so maybe do something to try to make it better, as opposed to just being like, hey, what's wrong with you? Try to be empathetic, understanding that people have shitty moods sometimes.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, I can just try and you just got me thinking about ways I can like do something for him, or just do something in general to help him get less anxious about it, try and shift the mood, I guess. That's very helpful.
And avoid talking about his actions and his stuff a little bit, so and him, and talk about the way it made you feel or the way you felt, or and feelings. It's very difficult to have this conversation without making the other person feel attacked, and that is going to be key. Words like why is often seen by most humans as an attack word. Why did you do that when you're 3 you get that stuck in your head that this is an attack. So try to avoid that. Try to avoid making this about him, and more about what's going on, and staying there. But that's just good general advice when you're having the difficult conversations about what people have done, is to make sure you're not attacking them, because as soon as you do that, they go defensive.
Yeah, and we would know all about that on shows like this.
Yeah.
If there's one thing we know about, it's arguing.
Right. And that's not to say that those types of things can't be useful in certain conversations, but you're still trying to keep this relationship with your dad together, and hopefully it doesn't come to something like Seth Andrews has done, and Matt's come. Several atheists have publicly stated that they've had to take conversations, put up very, very hard boundaries and stop talking to their parents. And that's something it sounds like you still want to try to avoid, and it may still be avoidable, right? And it may not be. In 5 years, you may be calling a show saying, hey, I've got to cut my parents off because they've become toxic, or my dad off because he's become toxic. And we hope that doesn't happen. But laying that groundwork now to keep that from happening is probably pretty important. And also accept the fact that you're probably going to screw it up at least once or twice, because I don't know that it's like playing with TNT, right?
I don't know what playing with TNT is like, Jim. What is playing with TNT like? Do you have some experience with that?
Okay, so I'm showing my age from the Westerns. Yeah. I used to watch. It's a delicate situation, right? You don't. It's like trying to carry fine china or something. You're going to bobble it and you're going to chip it at some point. So just try and feel it out. And he may not be ready to talk to you about it for a year or two. So, be prepared for that too. All right. But I would definitely just talk, first thing I do is say, hey, I understand I screwed up. This is what I'm going to do to try and prevent it from happening again. And come up with some good strategies, and ask him if he has any advice on how you can help do that once you've come up with some good strategies to mitigate the risk. And that will at least show him that you're taking him seriously and the situation seriously. Is how I would start. But your dad better, so you can take all this as hodgepodge and put a strategy together for yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, please
Yeah.
call us back,
This is
Chad,
awesome.
or
Yeah.
email us. Let us know how it went.
Yeah. And don't forget about, if you do need some professional help with this, don't be afraid to call Secular Therapy Project or Freedom from Religion Foundation, or any of those good resources as well that can get you some more professional help and strategies on how to deal with the situation.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful. I appreciate your guys' input.
All right. Well,
Awesome.
good luck. I hope everything works out for you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Talk to you. Bye.
That is one of the hardest situations I think we as atheists have, is dealing with our own family. And the trickiest. I just don't see, there's just no good way to do that with just because all the different levels that family is close to you, and all the different fears that parents have for their kids and all that, just not an easy conversation.
Yeah, and I feel like it would be difficult for us not to mention while we're talking about all of this, Happy Mother's Day to those of you that do have good relationships with your families.
Nice segue, Rudy. Yes, and Happy Mother's Day on this day when many people may be dancing around this very topic a little bit. I know I will be later when I call my mom this evening. So
yeah, my mother-in-law let me try out her new foot massage machine, and that was great. So,
oh wow, cool.
little Mother's Day something.
Yeah, foot massage machines are great. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yep.
All right, so we have Mike in Washington. Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, how you doing? Jim, I love your work. And sorry, I don't know who else is on the show with
Rudy.
you, but I like Rudy. Okay, nice. Nice to meet you. But yeah, so today I wanted to talk to you guys about death and kind of loss, generally in the secular community and how we may handle it. And this is kind of counterpunctual to maybe kind of, how some theists view it. I currently just lost my grandfather, who's largely kind of
sorry to hear that.
Of my, yeah, thanks, no worries. But he's been kind of this like tour de force in our family for ever since my mom's mother died when they were very young. So everyone's been very, he's been kind of the pillar. And he just died. Most of my family's Catholic or kind of Catholic light. But they'd call themselves Catholics. And I've just noticed a really difference in the way that I've responded to his death. Me being kind of an atheist, I'm pretty out in my family and everyone's like pretty chill with it. So I'm fortunate for that. But I've noticed that my atheism has helped me really kind of have excellent relationships with people in my life, because I don't expect anything more, right? I kind of expect that this is it. And any other interaction that I have with someone is kind of like icing on the cake every day, with my wife, right? I could get hit by a car today, I could be dead, but I'll get another day with my wife and I try to make it as good as possible. Cause again, who knows what's going to happen. And that in my kind of daily life or interactions with people, if I don't see my grandfather for a while, I'll call him. Or if there's kind of a big event and everyone's kind of, whooping it up or, having some beers, but he's not really, no one's really talking to him or whatever, I'll go over and sit down with him because, again, who knows? And that's really allowed me to be confident in my relationship with him and the interactions that I had with him, that I didn't leave anything on the table. And I just know that some of the other people in my family who are theists are really broken up. They really feel like this really deep sense of regret that they wish that they could have, done more. And that may not be directly related to their theism, but I just know that atheism for me personally has just been this really strong motivating force. And I just kind of wanted atheists to hear that. That are maybe going through something similar or potentially going to go through something similar in the future. And I wanted theists to know that because I think they maybe not be able to see how we deal with death. And I think it's really positive. I really celebrate life, and I think death is a part of it, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I actually had something very similar. When I was a theist, my grandfather died, and it was unfortunately due to cancer, so it was a slow and pretty pretty shitty way for it to happen, but all of the family had time to, get their affairs in order and adjust to the idea that he wasn't going to be there before it actually happened, before he actually passed. But I struggled a lot with the idea that I would see him again, but only under certain conditions of the way that I lived my life moving forward. And that was one of the things that kept me in religion for as long as I was there. And when I did eventually deconvert, it was a huge weight off my shoulders. Like, I immediately felt so much better about the idea of my grandfather because I knew that I had made my peace with him. I knew that everybody in the family had said what they needed to say, and that, he wasn't watching over me or judging me or anything like that. He wasn't hoping that I would make certain decisions or anything like that. I just thought, I think my grandfather would want me to be happy. And no offense, but he doesn't really get a say in what that means for me, But ultimately, I'd like to think that he would want me to be happy. And so it was a lot easier to deal with that idea of him than it had been when I was still holding on to these religious ideas, and I was pretty sure that I was gonna be damned. I was gonna die in Armageddon, So it was, I guess for me at least, I would certainly agree that being an atheist made death a lot easier for me to cope with.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Dealing with what is really, really important. But I think too, a lot of people have, a lot of atheists will have a hard time with a lot of the platitudes that Christians say. And I think part of dealing with that is just recognizing that when they say things like, he's in heaven, he's not suffering now, he's in a better place, all those things that they say are really ways with them trying to deal with the same grief that you are. And just because you disagree that they're in heaven doesn't mean that we as atheists can't have some empathy for the fact that our Christians are dealing with those as well, and to treat those not as attacks on our atheism, but rather exactly what they are: platitudes to make everybody feel better. And so that's also a part of that atheist-theist interaction that we have to have. And it doesn't have to be, I'm sure Buddhists and other religions have the same type of different platitudes, but still platitudes that they say to help them deal with it. But yeah, I think dealing with reality as it is recognizing that, we are going to die, and that we should take care of things now while we have the moment, because tomorrow is not promised. There's a Stoic philosophy, memento mori, remember you will die. And there's a myth that Julius Caesar, had a slave who would follow along behind him on parades and other places where he was out among the population, just saying that over and over to him so that he wouldn't let that go to his head. So that is kind of, it is important to recognize that death is the thing that's going to happen, and we should deal with that before. And I think a lot of Christians think that, I don't have to deal with the fact that my grandfather's getting older because I'll see him in heaven, I can talk to him then. And then you realize that maybe it's too late. So yeah, it is.
No, I think we're all kind of on the, just hitting the same points. I just want to again just call in and just say to anyone out there that's feeling, or going through something similar, one, you're not alone. Just remember that person, or, call them, or even if you're not going through it, just, call someone you haven't called for a while. I know we're all kind of going through, COVID, and death may be a little bit more, salient in our minds right now. So, that's all I had for you guys. And I just want to have a good rest of your day and a good start to your week.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay.
Heavy topic starting off.
Yeah, very heavy. And I think I was watching in chat people talking about some of the things that theists say, and I think we also have to remember that not everything a theist says is an attack on us as atheists.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a platitude. It's just something you say.
Yeah, I would never take offense to somebody telling me, that a lost loved one is in a better place. Because in my mind, it's like, well, not, being immobile in bed with painful cancer versus nothing at all. I guess that is still a better place. It's not the one you're thinking of, but I appreciate the sentiment all the
Right.
same.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's also another good reason to go talk to your moms and have good conversations and try to stay on their good side and have those conversations until they become toxic, because that happens too.
Yep.
All right, we ready for the next one?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a little less heavy. This is Kevin in New York. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Hey, you guys. I'd really like to bring up a debate about morality and suffering.
Well,
all right. Well, I think it can be summed up pretty simply when thinking about morality. Like, the concept of morality is purely subjective, in my opinion. So we might have an individual perspective in the quantity of how many people there are, a possible 7 billion subjective moralities. But when discussing the subject, it can be intuitive to bring up a child, for example, and their relationship to morality. Because a child, of course, cannot know right from wrong. But the important point is that the child, in the process of growing, comes to recognize the authority over it, and thereby adopting the subjective morality.
I would disagree with that a little bit. I would push back against that a little bit. Because at least in some of my own experiences, some of the kids I have been around who are growing up, who are learning about morality, some of them are basically just taught, this is bad because I said so. But there are also kids that are learning about morality by finding out what consequences are. If I do this to you, doesn't that hurt? Don't you not want that to happen? Why would you do that to somebody else? They'll feel that way too. So you don't want to do this because it feels bad when it happens to you. So you wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. So I guess, and I guess that is technically still subjective in that what you may or may not want to happen to you might be subjective, but I guess I would say it's definitely not 100% based on authority figures.
Right. And we're also social animals. So it's not, several billion independent views on or subjective views on what morality is. There's also what society thinks is moral as well. And that society can be as big as your local city, it can be as big as the country, the size like the United States, or as small as Vermont. And it can be the entire world. We decide as a group what is acceptable. And I think a lot of that is because we are a social species, that it's based on cooperation and recognizing when, when cooperation is good and when it's bad. I would agree that most babies in many ways are selfish in that they're completely focused on them, but that until they start realizing there's a world and people and other things out there, and then kind of going on from there, building that out. And I kind of agree with you with authority as well, because that's kind of what parents and adults are in many ways, are authority figures. But also we're also social species, and that's how we learn as well. So yeah, babies have to be taught almost everything from the beginning. And I agree with you that it is somewhat subjective. But once you have the subjective standards set, then you can set objective goals to improve things as well. So it can be both, but the initial subjective of what we're going to call good and bad is definitely subjective. But the way we can measure how we're moving towards better and improving things can be done objectively. So I think it's a more of a mix than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, definitely. That's why it's important to point out that within a child, the concept of morality can never be concrete. It's just that process of growing, and it really comes down to whether that child will recognize if that's a good authority or not. You know what I mean? As they progress into the other stages of life.
Okay. What is the point you're trying to make?
Well, me myself as a theist, the reason why I bring up the subject of morality and suffering is because, say Jesus, for example, as many people would just consider him as a teacher. The reason why it's convincing for me is because not only did he seem as a teacher, but as an authority on subjects such as morality and suffering.
What made him an authority on those things, as opposed to like anybody else who had anything to say about what's right or wrong or what you should or shouldn't do?
Well, concentrating on what I was calling about, like, for example, the reason why he seemed like an authority is because, like, for say, the topic of suffering, the key to it is really endurance, because it was once said that
I want to stop you right there a little bit. Are you saying that people need to put up with suffering? Just as a general rule, and that's just a good moral?
Up until the point that it's up until the point where it can only become life-threatening should a person endure suffering.
But isn't that even better? Because when you die, you go to heaven. And if you suffer enough, you go to heaven.
Yeah, I also don't remember Jesus saying anything about any exceptions about, well, except when it's life-threatening. I think that that's an interpretation. But even besides that, I mean, I can think of lots of instances where suffering is absolutely needless. Like, if you can do something about it, if you can make the suffering stop, why wouldn't you? If you're observing somebody else's suffering or your own suffering, I mean, there's so many instances that I could think of where it would not make sense, where enduring suffering is, I mean, enduring suffering is good, I guess, in certain circumstances, but I certainly wouldn't use that as a general rule. I might use it if, I'm at work and my coworker says something kind of shitty, but I just have to get back to what I'm doing and bite my tongue and move on. Right. Maybe I would use it then, but
if you've got a debilitating illness, anything along those lines, yeah. I mean, if there's an illness that can't be cured, you have to do it. But and I mean, Jesus never really went back and fixed some of the severe problems with the Bible. Things like thought crimes. Coveting your neighbor's wife is a thought crime.
I want to remind everyone listening that even though I'm a theist, not only do I read the Bible, but apocryphal texts. I won't talk about that, but I'm really going to concentrate on what we're talking about. But the really important thing to point out is that if the Adam and Eve story is true, then something that is constantly overlooked is that the result of that story is that Satan became our God, all the way up until the suffering of Jesus.
Yeah,
that doesn't follow.
Yeah, that doesn't follow. But anyway, but you didn't address my point, which is that he doesn't address one of these things that is really, really key, which is thought crimes. He doesn't address slavery. He doesn't address women as essentially property. He doesn't address any of these problems that the Old Testament brings up, and he actually exacerbates some of these as well. So I don't know. He had some good things to say, but yeah, I mean, I could say the same thing of Hitler. I could say the same thing of Mussolini. I can say the same thing as Jim Jones, David Koresh.
Yeah, he had good ideas and bad ideas, and I don't really see him as different from anybody else who has good ideas and bad ideas.
Yeah.
Well, we have a situation of all the way up from the time of Adam and Eve to the time of Jesus' suffering, a situation in which God was trying to withdraw us from the operation of the curse, which is death. Now,
why couldn't he just do it?
Yeah, I mean, so this whole thing of the dead or the blood, whatever you want to call it, is also problematic because God created the rules. He created people, he created creatures, humans, that weren't able to follow the rules. He did this with full foreknowledge of what was going to happen next. And so if you really wanted to get perverse, you could say that God set up the entire situation just so that he could kill his own kid. And that is not an unreasonable thing to claim when he knew what the rule, he created the rules, he created the people who couldn't follow them, and he knew what the result would be. Right? And so I really have a problem with people who say, well, you know, there was some sort of blood debt that Christ had to pay because of sins put on by a man. It's problematic.
Things like something that you brought up before, like say the concept of slavery. I think that is indeed answered because when you read texts, not just from the Bible but apocryphal texts.
I don't want to interrupt you, Kevin, but I feel like you're not really addressing the concerns that we brought up. I feel like you're kind of bouncing around a little bit.
Oh no, this really does have to do with what you guys are talking about because I know all of this is subjective, like say what Jim was saying about Hitler and these other figures in which we have examples of the worst things humans can do. But even from their perspective, say Hitler, his subjective morality was just that, it was subjective morality because he thought he was doing something good, and he thought that the killing of Jews was a thing of it had to do with hygiene.
Yeah, but kind of like Jim brought up earlier, we have our individual subjective moralities, but we also have societal morality, and all of society pretty much, except for a small group of people who are still into those ideals, have fully condemned those actions. As a society, we've all agreed that that wasn't good.
Right. And I would say that that society as a whole, worldwide society, since the time of Christ has gotten better, and we've gotten more ethical as time has gone by, not because of the Christian church or any other church for that matter, but despite some of their best efforts. And we continue to move forward. The church is consistently on the wrong side of things. And I say the church in the most general sense, the Christian church especially. They're on the wrong side of the LGBTQIA problem. There are issues. They're on, I don't want to say problem, but anyway, the trans issues, they're on the wrong side of every social issue we can think of right now. And they'll continue to be on the wrong side because they have this book of absolute capital T truth that is made up of mostly BS and bad stuff. And so, yeah, you can say it's subjective all you want, but ethically, this society right now worldwide is better than it was 2,000 years ago. And in 2,000 years, we will be better provided religion does not take over.
I have doubts that even in our current state, it can reach a point in terms of subjective reality to where it can become sustainable.
Why? What makes you say that?
Because we're too much subjected to the pressures of everyday living to come to a point to where we collectively show what is the best that we can do in terms of mankind.
But
I strongly disagree. I
So
mean,
that-
did you miss 2020? Did you miss, protests worldwide of people who interrupted their own everyday lives to make a moral stand? I mean, people are doing that every day, all the time. If it's just a post on Facebook to say, I disagree with this, or saying to a coworker, hey, that was kind of racist, or like whatever. If it's a big thing or a small thing, we literally do this every single day. I don't know how you can say that people are too bogged down in their everyday lives to make a difference or care.
And that point itself, that we're too bogged down in our everyday lives, is also, that's also incorrect, because we now have 2 days a week that most of us take off, right? Whether it's Saturday and Sunday or not is completely dependent on your work schedule. But we have, in general, more free time today than we did 100 years ago or 2,000 years ago, when you were working from dusk until dawn just to put food on your own table, right?
Yeah.
And now I can order, groceries once or twice or 3 times a week, or every day of the week, or twice a day, and have them delivered and never step outside of my own house and never stop doing things that I do. In free time, people having free time is one of the keys to people thinking about ethical problems. And we can see this, when Greece was in its heydays, when we got all of our Western philosophers. Same with Rome. When Rome fell, people stopped having the free time. We stopped having the ability to have people devote their entire lives to studying something as frivolous as ethics, or as frivolous as what is beauty, or doing art, or making new things. So I just don't see any way, not only with what Rudy said, but with what I just pointed out, that you're even in the same galaxy as right.
One more thing, I'd like to hear what you guys think about this, because this is the reason why I, in my mind, try to assert that figures like Jesus is an authority on all this, because it was once said that it is the desire that the lesser things be made the greater at the end of the age through the power of God.
So what?
And so
Yeah.
I think that
I'm sorry. I have absolutely zero care for that statement whatsoever. That's like, okay. And
Somebody saying something doesn't necessarily have, that doesn't really have any sway. And I guess my question is, do you understand why that doesn't matter at all to us?
Well, that's I'm trying to make it understandable on why I even brought up on why a person should endure suffering.
I don't think anybody should have to endure suffering.
I mean,
we should do everything in our power to alleviate ourselves from suffering.
Well, yes, but I mean, ultimately, I'm looking at the ultimate result of all this. I mean,
what is the ultimate result of all this? What is the ultimate result of suffering?
Well, that we all have to die one day. But I seriously don't think that our existence ends with death.
And your evidence of that is what?
I think that you're also saying that suffering is inevitable and death is inevitable. There's a lot of other things that are inevitable too that aren't suffering and death. Tax day coming is inevitable.
Yes, another example on how Jesus speaks as an authority instead of a teacher is that it was also said that once we see how much of the world was before us and after us, we would see that our life was only but a single day and our sufferings a single hour.
You don't think any other philosophers ever said anything like that?
Yeah, I can think of several off the top of my head that have said exactly the same thing. I mean, you keep bringing up Jesus as this authority, and I'm like, well, I don't care. I mean, you haven't proven that he's anything more or less than any other human teacher in his own time. He was saying things that were pretty radical, but today they're actually, we have moved ethically beyond anything that he has said.
Yeah.
We have
and I
Go ahead.
think that an even greater point here is even if Jesus did come up with some totally original philosophical or moral concept, what does that prove? Like, he came up with something, so what? Somebody had to be the first to say something,
Assuming he was.
For some reason in all this, it seems like free will is important to God as well as his other laws that he lays out for us.
Well, I would disagree that your God cares about free will. He doesn't care about free will.
Yeah, did you read the story of Moses when God repeatedly makes Pharaoh's heart hardened so that he does not have a choice but to send Moses away, and then his lands are plagued and his kid is killed, etc., etc.?
Yeah. And the love me or die is not about free will either. Love me or burn in hell forever is not about free will either, right? That is about control.
Well, I don't think that questioning God really brings about any condemnation. And I even have questions within myself whether the concept of hell is even eternal.
Well, you're going to have to deal with the other Christians on that one, because when you Christians come up with something that is actually capital T truth, then I'm much more willing to talk to Christians about what they believe. Mm-hmm. But when there are 2,000 different denominations all getting their dogma from the same book and they are diametrically opposed, and these dogmas cannot exist all at the same time, then I'm sorry, I don't care what your book says any more than I read any other book. And so as far as ethics go, we are far beyond it. You're right, it is subjective. You can choose to go with divine command theory, which is what you're doing when you say that Jesus is the authority, and you'll do whatever Jesus says is ethical. But I, for one, am going to look at every situation differently, and I'm going to apply empathy and care for my fellow human being as much as I am humanly capable of doing in every situation, and use that as my guiding light, as opposed to some guy who lived 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, this was an enjoyable conversation, Kevin, and I would love for you to call back sometime, but we do need to move on to other callers.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. It was a good conversation. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
All right. And I think we have some folks to thank at the moment, some patrons of the week.
Our top 5 patrons are Eric Tweet, CJ Dennis, Dingleberry Jackson, Desert Heathen, and Bethany P. Thank you guys for supporting the show and for supporting the ACA. Guys rock.
We do appreciate it. It helps us keep the lights on and keep the internet bill paid, which are both important things when you're doing an internet show. But yes, thank you guys. And thank you folks in chat who are also super chatting and donating there as well. We greatly appreciate it. So on to the next...
on a call.
Yeah. What looks good to you? Or do you have...
There's not a lot of options. Let's go with Anthony.
I don't see Anthony. I see a Gary and an Olena.
Oh, that's weird.
That is very weird.
Why are we not seeing the same one? Oh, there we go. It just changed for me. So
okay.
Well, I'll let you pick then.
All right. So, hello, Gary, all the way from England, jolly old England. How you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you two doing?
Doing. I think we're about to both say pretty good.
Yeah. So I'm a Quaker from the UK, which is a denomination of Christianity. What I want to talk about is things that atheists and Christians could maybe collaborate on in society. Like, for example, when the whole George Floyd thing happened last year, I went to a Black Lives Matter march in here and even in UK, which I'm sure it has its differences from the US, there are still people of Afro-Caribbean descent who were being stopped at a disproportionate rate to the white people in this country because they even asked that. They asked, have you been stopped with the police? And I can tell you from actually being there, no one was actually taking it. So I think that this is the sort of thing that we, together, because I'm sure you care about this thing as much as I do, that needs reforming. And there's also the social housing, the amount of food bank, stuff like that. And I think that those are things that we, atheists and Christians, could come together to, even though we have differences, to combat. Because I think those are things that I think we both would agree are horrible things that shouldn't be happening in society.
Yeah, I'm willing to work with anybody on anything to make the world a better place. I don't care if there is a church group out, doing a protest for something that I care about. Heck, I'd join them if they'd let me. I don't care what the background is. If we're trying to fight for something good, I don't care who's standing next to me, as long as they're trying to fight for something good too, Yeah,
it's just that I just think that we let our differences get in the way sometimes of us collaborating with those issues. Because again, we'd be like as somebody who's LGBT friendly, I'm more than willing to say to my fellow Christian brothers and sisters, you're wrong about that issue, especially with trans issues and stuff like that. Because I do think that it's an important issue as well. Because there are trans people even today who are facing, death or facing, assault or facing some sort of family ties cutting. And I think that those are things that we could also work together with, try and change people's minds on that. Because I think that they're taking the Bible out of context to try and prove their point. Because I think that me personally, this is just my own personal point of view, that gay gives them this squeaky feeling, and they want, instead of just saying that, they'd rather put the shield of faith in front of it, rather than confront the fact that the squeaky feeling there, the feeling, which is usually baseless.
I've heard different views and interpretations on that. I've heard people say it's out of context. I've heard people sort of go back with different interpretations of the original text and say, actually, it could have meant this or that. And I've heard people say, yeah, that's what the Bible says, and I don't care. I don't have to take the whole thing whole cloth. It was written by men. Whatever your approach is, if you're a Christian who is a LGBTQI plus ally, then great. That's awesome. And I think that you're right that in some ways, the labels of theist, atheist, Christian can sometimes get in the way of people working together. But that's something that people need to figure out for themselves. Is it so important that I make a stand as a person who does not believe in a God, and not work towards an actual real world ideal that I care about, just because I don't want to work with people who don't hold that same label? Put some things in perspective, Yeah.
And too, I think in the States, we actually have more Christians who aren't willing to work with atheists, and we have atheists unwilling to work with Christians. And I'm sure there are some atheists who are, for some of them may very well be for good reason, given experiences they've had in the past, are just not able to. But we had it wasn't Seth Andrews, it was another atheist who tried to make a very large donation to a theist cause, and they refused the donation. They gave it back because it was from an atheist, not for any other reason. So yeah, I would agree that we do, that there are things that we could be allies on, and we can jump in the harness and start pulling at it, start working at it. But some of the theists have to get over their prejudices too, at least in this country. I can't speak for England. But we do have people who will refuse to work with atheists.
I absolutely agree. Because again, there are people out there who are very bigoted towards people like yourselves, and I think that's wrong. Because again, even though we may disagree on some of the issues, and again, with your last caller, you would disagree with him on some of the issues. We could disagree civilly on those issues, and we could try and come to maybe a reasoned understanding of each other without, name calling or whatever. But the thing is that I do agree with you that there are some Christians out there who are downright bigoted, and I think that's wrong. Like there are some Christians out there who disown their children for being non-believers, and I think that's wrong. You should love your children no matter what. And if you're more likely to love them, they're more likely to come back. Well, that's my personal point of view, because the more loving you are, the more loving that you can show Christ is. In my opinion, and I'm sure.
That's something I've actually said to some Christians that I know in real life is like, I get that you think that I'm wrong and that I need saving, but do you think like bullying me is going to make me want to join you? Like understand that approach actually doesn't make sense, even if your goal is to convert me, if your goal is to save me, bullying me, discriminating against me, that's not going to help your cause at all.
Oh.
So,
and also, I don't know if you watch our show Truth Wanted on Fridays, but we
Dan.
just yeah, Dan did an entire month of theist co-hosts talking, and Truth Wanted does not deal with the atheism question. It deals with all the other lack of science ideas, cryptids, and flying saucers, and all the rest of that stuff as well. So, I mean, we do try that. I know Atheists Helping the Homeless works with theists and theist organizations as well. And there are a number of atheists helping out with theist run callers here. So we do try it. And you're right. It is something that I don't think that the crowd that thinks that ostracizing somebody and throwing them out of your community is a good way to make them come back around. Not in today's society. Maybe at one time, I think as recent as the 1700s and the 1800s, that getting thrown out of your community was a huge deal. And that's why many of our founding fathers probably, or not many, but some at least, did in fact go to church, because not being a part of society was not good for them. And so, yeah, you're right. Bullying people is not going to work. I could make some comments about how God is the ultimate bully, but we'll leave those conversations aside for now. But yeah, I think that you're right. We do need to focus on the things that move society forward, whether we're atheists or theists or somewhere in between.
Yeah. Thanks again for bringing that up, Gary. And it was a good call, but we have a couple more callers on the line and not enough time to talk to them. So we're going to move on, but thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I'll speak to you again. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Have a good one.
All right.
I haven't gotten hot under the collar at any of these calls yet.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is, let me hit the button, is Olena in Arizona, my former stomping grounds. How's it going, Olena?
Oh, it's going wonderful. How are you?
I think we're a little bit cooler than Arizona right now. We're getting up into the 80s, and I think you guys are starting to hit the hundreds now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm getting snow, so I'm jealous.
Yeah, perfect weather. Oh, snow sounds cold.
It is.
I haven't seen snow in years.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, even Flagstaff hasn't been getting much snow lately, so it's kind of hard to even go see it up there in Flag. But anyway, you said you may have found a religion.
In Phoenix. Yes. So I've been an atheist for as long as I could remember, not being influenced by my direct family.
Uh-huh.
Before that, it was Orthodox Christianity attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's where I've learned firsthand about religion and why I don't like it and why it makes no sense. And I've been an atheist ever since. And I've even had it on my dog tags when I was in the military and stuff. But unfortunately, I've been going through some mental health issues and going through diagnosis, fixing it, et cetera, bipolar if you're familiar. But as far as the VA is concerned, one of the healing things is, of course, religion. Even the military has freaking chaplains that are supposedly will help you with whatever spiritual or religious issues you may have, but they're predominantly Christian, and, you know, there's not that many of them anyway, and they're not working for everybody. But I was in a vulnerable spot, et cetera, et cetera. Buddhism suddenly sounded great to me, and it still does. So I'm wondering, maybe I finally found a religion, but the question is, could I still not believe in supernatural? Like, Buddhism is a religion, right? Could I be an atheist and a Buddhist at the same time?
I mean, do you believe that there is a God?
No, not really. That still sounds highly unlikely to me.
Then it sounds like you're still an atheist.
Of Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right. Well, also, I think it's a better question for a Buddhist scholar than those of us who, you know, I don't know that much about Buddhism. I do know that there are secular branches of Buddhism that don't get into the God question as much, and may not even get into the supernatural issues as much. So
I find when I research Buddhism, there are certain things that still don't line up with what I would believe in or what would.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a single Christian that takes every single tenet of Christianity and every single verse in the Bible into their theology. I mean, you don't have to take anything whole cloth. If you like certain aspects of Buddhism, if it's helpful for your mental health, if you just like it and like the ritual behind it and you find it calming or grounding or whatever, you are free to do all of that stuff. And if you start to believe in supernatural stuff as a result, well, I would certainly encourage you to step up your epistemology a little bit. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with adopting a spiritual practice, especially if you're not harming anybody, you're not trying to change any legislation, and you're still using your reasoning skills, you're still using some level of empiricism. Yeah.
But
did we drop
her? Yeah, it looks like she did drop. Okay.
Oh shoot.
Darn. Also, if you're still listening, there is I believe a Buddhist center there in Phoenix. I don't know how close you are to Phoenix, but yeah, that is something else. But yeah. All right. Bummer. And
I
now
hope the little we said was helpful.
Yeah, I hope. All right, so let's go with Jose in California. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Another person whose weather I'm probably jealous of right now.
It's getting there. I'm originally from Vegas, but I'm in the Army, so right now I'm stationed in California. So
well, thank you for your service, sir.
So.
All right. What did you want to talk about today?
All right, so I wanted to ask a question. So not necessarily like an argument or anything, but so essentially what it is all right. So for theism, right? As far as the definition goes, it just simply means that I'm convinced. Just like atheism means that you're not convinced. So why is it, or is it necessary for a theist like myself to have to even provide evidence? Like, is that reasonable?
I mean, like, no, I guess in the sense that you don't have to prove anything to anybody unless you're trying to convince them to believe it too. I can say and think whatever I want. But if I'm trying to convince somebody else, then yeah, I would probably need evidence. But you can believe whatever and not have to provide a shred of evidence to anybody.
Right. But if you're speaking philosophically, then yes, if you anybody making the claim has the burden of proof on that claim, speaking philosophically. So I'm not saying that to disagree with Rudy in any way, shape, or form, because I completely agree with that. you as a human being don't owe anybody else an explanation for your own beliefs. But if you're going to try to explain them to somebody else or convince somebody else, then you have the burden of proof for your belief. Just like if an atheist says there is no God and makes that claim that there are no gods, they incur a burden of proof. But again, you don't owe anybody an explanation.
Yeah, in the sense that you're saying you believe something, it's like, okay, why? You have to have some reason that you're convinced that that is in fact the case. Even if it's not convincing to anybody else, it might convince you. You can't just say I believe something, but but not actually have any rhyme or reason why you believe that to be the case.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense then. Okay. Well, yeah.
All right.
That's pretty much all I want to talk about. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Have a good day. Bye.
Mm-hmm. You too. Bye.
So we either have really, really deep topics or easy ones. So, or heavy topics, not deep. But and so I guess next up is Carpe Diem in Colorado. How's it going? Welcome to the show. And Rudy's here too.
You're awesome today's show. Just saying that.
Oh, thank you.
And Rudy. Okay, so my question is really about redemption and forgiveness in the secular community, and how it looks like when we try to make alliances with someone who think differently from us, or who maybe we even thinks the same as us, but then they go and say something hurtful, or they do something that is literally toxic, or they might not realize it, or maybe they do it on purpose. I don't think that's what I'm actually getting at. What does one have to do to come back from having hurt the causes that we're trying to work on together? So how does that look like? How does forgiveness and redemption look in the secular community is basically my question. And I can give examples if necessary, but we can just talk about it in general.
I think we can all think of some off the top of our own heads.
Yeah, easily. And I think some of that is, so one, there is, for some folks, there is a break of trust that happens. Richard Dawkins, for instance, has been abominable on a number of topics for so long that I don't think there is necessarily a breach of trust. We just don't trust him when it comes to things he says about trans issues and other issues as well. But for him to come back, this is one of the problems that I have with some folks as well. We should not be completely cutting Dawkins off, or Shermer, or some of these other people who hold really, really bad beliefs, because all we're doing is forcing them into their own echo chamber, and they'll never have a chance to change their minds. And I think it's important that we do that we give them a chance to realize they're wrong and move forward together. But also, unless you're willing to make the apology and do the work to show that the apology is real, I don't know that there has to be forgiveness. And I don't know that everybody has to forgive somebody who has done the work, right? Everyone is going to require a different amount of work and a different, I don't want to call it level of apology, but different type of apology. And some people may never get over the hurt.
Yeah.
And so that is a thing as well. So yeah, I think it's make the apology, make it as real as you possibly can, do the work to repair whatever damage was done, and accept the fact that for some people you may not have, you may have gone the line too far. I don't know. What do you think, Rudy? I know you're.
I've thought about this a lot because there was sort of a big controversy related to this when I kind of was first joining the atheist online community. So my approach to forgiveness and reconciliation, even outside of this specific circumstance, has always been, first of all, let that person know in the first place that you are hurt and why. Because holding a grudge against somebody and not giving them a chance to defend themselves or to make amends is just, well, you've decided to end that relationship, essentially. You're not even giving that other person a chance to repair it, so you've decided to end it. And the next thing would be, of course, to give that person an opportunity to make a change or to understand why they said or did something wrong. And they may disagree. That's something too, is that you might turn out to be wrong, or you might rethink your position and say, maybe there's also different levels to things too. Like when it comes to being like problematic, for example, about LGBT issues or something like that, somebody could say something ignorant and somebody could say something malicious. And you have to realize that those are two different things. That's a big one to me as far as online discourse has gone and seeing people rip each other to shreds, is that there is a huge difference between, at least most of the time, sometimes the line is blurry, but most of the time there's a pretty big and obvious difference between somebody who is speaking out of ignorance and somebody who is speaking out of malice. So basically, I guess the only thing I could think is just to be thoughtful and be considerate, and like Jim said, you don't have to forgive anybody on a personal basis. By no means. You don't have to forgive anybody of anything. You could have somebody do everything that they could reasonably be asked to do to make amends, and you still aren't required to forgive them. Or you could say, I forgive you, but I really don't fuck with you anymore, because, we've lost that trust. I understand you've done your best to make amends, but I still don't really want you in my life or want you in my circle.
I think there's a difference between forgiving someone, which is really about yourself, and letting go of the power that the hurt of what the person did has over you.
Absolutely.
And be willing to include the person and be willing to include the person on your future, right? Certainly in my private life, I have had lots of events like that. My concern is more that when we don't give people a chance to redemption, not only might we lose a future ally that might come back with a vengeance, right, and be even more strongly of an ally than they ever could have been, or she could have been, or they could have been, because they learn from the experience. But when we ostracize the people who think differently from us, perhaps because they made in some mistake, but even if they did do it intentionally, if we can't, who are we as a skeptical community if we fail to allow people to say or ask bad questions, sometimes out of ignorance or sometimes out of malice, but give them an opportunity to learn, right? If the show is about, it's a show, for example, tell me what you believe. And if you change your mind, tell us that too, because that's what we're here for, right? And so I'm scared of closing the doors on future allies, because we are so hurt that we sometimes, understandably so, react in a way that pushes away those that may have been an ally further in the future. And I agree with you guys. You can't force someone to work with someone that hurt you in the past, right? But at the same time, if that's the attitude that we have, how do we ever increase, well-being in our community and basically hear other voices also too, because maybe there's a valid point that the other people are trying to make. So example, I'm not going to mention the exact example, but the example that happened right before you came into ACA is one example. That person isn't still not in the fold, right, of the ACA, and that's something that saddens me, as I feel like we are sending a message that you're either with us exactly like we want, or you are against us. But I really don't feel like that's what you guys just shared, and that's amazing. And I hope that there are more people in our community willing to educate others and accept others, so that we can continue to grow the community, because people are not going to think the way we do all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that a lot of these things aren't decisions that are made on an individual basis. A lot of these, especially concerning a group, an organization, none of these are decisions that can be made on a personal basis. So there's other considerations that have to be taken into account, like just general PR optics, which like it sucks that those are things that have to be part of it, because you would want to just be able to do whatever you think is right, or whatever. But sometimes it becomes a matter of, okay, but this is what we have to do for this group of people or whatever. But on an individual basis, I don't think that anybody is saying never work with this person, or you can't be one of us, you can't be with us. And the people that are saying that that's what's happening are looking at the situation without nuance. A lot of people might agree that they don't want this person around or whatever. That doesn't mean that they are dogpiling them. They might just all have come to that conclusion individually,
So this is the last question I have then, I guess. What is too far that you no longer can be redeemed, right? So is there a line that if you cross that line, you are written off forever and I never want to work with you? How and I know it's probably different for every person, right? But
yeah,
I mean, I guess answer just for you guys. Answer for you guys. Is there a line like that for you?
I've had a line where that was crossed, where there's, at least one person that I can think of that I'm like, no, I'm not going to do content with that person again in any way, shape, or form. But that was a personal boundary. I don't think that you can just say, what is the line, even for an individual. Sometimes you don't know what that line is until you get there. It's a case-to-case basis.
Yeah, and for me,
what do you think,
if you're still causing hurt and pain to people, no, not until you stop doing that. Whether that hurt and pain is to me or to people I know or people I don't know. You need to stop hurting people, and then you need to show, like I said, do some work to repair the damage as much as you can. But I'm not willing to stop. I don't stop talking to people, and I just don't see any point in that. That's what theists do. That's not what atheists should do. But people are free to disagree with that on that, and I support your right to do so.
I appreciate I honestly think what you guys said here was pure wisdom, and I appreciate that. And again, I hope that our community can.
We're not Jesus. This isn't pure wisdom.
I think you guys are doing better than Jesus. That's for sure.
All right.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
It's a low bar, but
well, he did say to turn the other cheek. To be fair, right? So.
Well, we're not saying that either. So. All right. Thanks for the call.
Too. I don't know if I'd agree. I don't agree that turning the other cheek is even a good idea necessarily. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
That was an interesting call.
Yeah. Let's see. Who do you see that you want to talk to? Because we are kind of getting.
Right. Yep. Let's see. What do we got? I would be willing to take any of these calls.
Okay.
I honestly don't have a preference.
All right. And then I think I'll just take Schell in Arizona. Another Arizonan. We're getting lots of Zonies today. And I'm just taking them in order. I'm not giving people from Arizona a preference. So how you doing today, Schell?
I'm well. Thanks for taking my call, Rudy and Jim. So I'll just get down to it since I know we are short on time. Essentially, my brother and his wife are very hardcore evangelical Christian. They're going to homeschool their children. They're leaving California because they don't want their children exposed to, all this recent LGBTQA awareness, essentially. And my concern is, so number one, I'm an atheist. How do I expose my nibblings, who are still young, 2 and 6 months, to these other sides of social justice issues, to, science, because they're young earth creationists? And do I need to do it in a way that is respectful to how they want to raise their children?
I would say, right from the start, I would never want to, I wouldn't want to advise someone like, how do I secretly get these kids exposed to stuff their parents don't want them to know about? Like, I would be cautious right there, just because I know on the flip side, if I ever have a kid and my parents go to their elders about, we want to spend time with our grandchild, but we don't know how to surreptitiously teach them about the Bible without their parents knowing. Like, that's not a conversation that should be happening on either side, I don't think. If that's, it's not like these kids are actually, in fact, not going to know that gay people exist. That's not going to happen pretty much no matter where you live in the United States, unless they are in some kind of actual cult where they don't watch any TV or get any news media information at all. It's unlikely that they're not going to at least know about it. But I think ultimately, it's just important to realize that despite your best intentions, it's not your responsibility to expose them to those things, to choose what they as kids are exposed to. If their parents don't want them to have certain influences on them, at least at a very young age, there's pretty much nothing that you could ethically, respectfully do to make that happen. I guess that would be my first thing to say.
Yeah. And I would say, coming from the more impish and problem-causing point of view, is you could just buy them, science-related and education-related toys and games and other stuff like that is age-appropriate. But if you wanted to, but you wouldn't keep the relationship that way, right? And if you want to keep the relationship, then you need to do it with their permission. So buy the most sciencey toys you can for them, and books and other things to keep them stimulated and curious, but with their parents' permission, with their parents' help in selecting those, so that you're not completely alienating them, right? Because it sounds like you don't want to alienate them. And so going out and buying them 101, science projects is probably not going to be good. But trying to encourage curiosity and exploration in scientific thought is probably the most you're going to be able to do, without directly contravening their parental rights or pissing off the parents, right? And your brother and sister-in-law in particular. So I think you can do it. You can do it and be careful. I mean, there are places that you can go. There's it's not the Butterfly Museum, but there's a place where there's live butterflies and science exhibits and things like that. That kind of thing would be seen as, is pretty neutral because it's just butterflies.
Oh, yeah. A day trip to the Children's Science Museum? That sounds awesome.
Yeah. But again, do it with their parents' permission, and just don't get a reputation for everything you do trying to undermine your brother and sister or sister-in-law.
Sure. Yeah, those are really good points.
You've got the angel and devil on your shoulders.
Exactly. And on that note, I have actually already purchased them more age appropriate sciencey books like Quantum Physics for Babies type thing. And which I have strong faith. We've got good stock in our family, I'm sure they'll absorb it. But yeah, I'm really, thanks for kind of backing me, or giving me some direction, because I was really kind of hesitant on, I don't want to, overcome their rights as parents, and I don't want to be surreptitious. I do try to be outspoken, and when, they kind of start projecting bigoted views, I will answer in like a, I wouldn't say respectful manner necessarily, but I definitely let them know there are other opinions on it, and that I will not hold back in the presence of my nibblings if they were to, make comments in front of them that I disagree with. So, but yeah, I just felt guilty, like I was maybe doing a disservice to my nibblings, that, they're not going to get exposed to these things because I don't want to step on toes. But Thank you
I mean,
very
if they're
much, Rudy and Jim. I got my. Oh,
but I was just going to say, if they're around you, then they are exposed to an LGBT person. That's something right there. I mean, and you shouldn't be expected to never talk about yourself. You know, if you say, "Oh, I just had a great date with this nice lady yesterday," and they try to shush you, it should be like, "What? I'm literally just talking about something totally normal." You know, nothing wrong with that at all.
Like,
Right.
just updating you on my day. Like,
All right.
Well, thanks so much, you guys. You have a great Sunday.
All right. You
Thanks.
too. Bye.
Alrighty, and happy Mother's Day to anyone who might be a mother.
Yes. Thank you.
You know what? I'm going to happy Mother's Day myself because I consider myself the mother of my cats.
Yes, so that probably goes to pet parents as well as people parents as well. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. And so I think that is the last call we're going to be able to take. And we had some good light conversations today. I was really, really, really pleased. And
these were great conversations.
Yeah.
You know who we need to thank, though? You need to thank the crew.
The most motley people we know, our motley crew.
Yes, our motley crew. Hello, all you beautiful people. Puck, where's your Fanta? I know you've got it.
Oh, he's got cheese balls up there, so there's his orange.
Okay, he's got some orange stuff there. Thank you to all those beautiful, fabulous people. And I'm really happy with all the positivity in the calls today. Let's send out some love rings. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, I got the wrong hand going.
3, 2, 1. Yeah, 1 and go. We're not
Our
nearly as
timing was
adept
off,
at
but we
this as
tried.
yeah. We'll get it down.
We tried.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Well, whether you do believe, it's important that we all work together to fight back against this pandemic. And thanks to all the first responders and essential workers who are helping us get through this. But if you don't believe, this is your home. Not only just the ACA and all of our online presences, our Facebook groups, both public and private, our Discord channel, and all of it, but anywhere where you find those of us who are our host members of the ACA, welcome home if you need one, and welcome home if you don't. We appreciate you being here with us. But if you do believe, just remember, we don't hate you.
We don't hate you. We just think
you're wrong. See you next time.